Pastor Kent Reeder from Lumen Church in Seattle, Washington, and I'm joined by 4 young women from Wisconsin Lutheran College. They've been here with our church for the last 7 days doing some mission work with us and all kinds of fun things, and we had a really interesting discussion this afternoon about what it's like to be from Wisconsin or going to school in Wisconsin and then come to Seattle in the midst of the coronavirus everything that's happening. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then I have some questions for them so that you can get their perspective.
Hi, I'm Kayla Grundman, and I'm from Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Hi, I'm Haley Charleston. I'm from Rogers, Minnesota.
Hi, I'm Sophia Faustini. I'm from Murrah Falls, Wisconsin.
And I'm Anna Buckmeyer, and I'm from Mugwanago, Wisconsin.
So a little bit more than a week ago, before they had come, they came on Saturday to Seattle. We had some questions about whether the trip was even going to happen, right? Like, so I reached out to the faculty and staff at WLC, and we were trying to figure out, is this a kind of trip that's going to go on? You guys were dealing with the same question because, you know, we were asking it, the school was asking it, and you talked about how people in your family or people in your circles had a perspective on whether or not you should go. Who would like to speak to that perspective that people had a little bit more than a week ago?
Yeah, I can jump in. I guess I didn't have, a lot of people didn't really say too much, but when I started getting a lot of emails being like, double check with your parents, like make sure you're all good about this trip, and I brought it up to my parents, they're like, well, yeah, like, we'd be more ashamed if you didn't go on this trip than if you did. And then just a lot of adults in general, like, oh yeah, like, you'll be fine, like, it's not that big of a deal, everything's kind of under control. A couple people here and there are like, you're gonna get the corona, but more of like a joking manner.
Sure.
Not necessarily, I would say, super serious.
Yeah, I guess similar here. Like, a lot of people just told me, like, wash your hands, don't lick anybody, and just, like, make sure you're careful. But, like same thing. Like, you'll regret it if you don't go.
How'd you do that while you were here?
I mean, I just washed my hands. They were very dry, but I just kept on washing them, and
I would note that she did not say she didn't lick any people while she was here.
definitely kept on saying it.
What about students? Like, among people who were around your age, what was the perspective?
I would say some of my friends were very, oh, you're going to have a great time, it's nothing to worry about, it's barely even the flu. And then there were other friends who were like, don't come back. When you come back, don't even come around me because I don't want the coronavirus. So there's a little bit split down the middle, I think, for people our age.
Okay, sure. And what's been interesting is that, like, yesterday, the day before, some major announcements were made about how things were going to shut down or how people were going to function in regard to precautions of the coronavirus. And you guys found something fascinating out yesterday. What was that?
We are going to be in a 14-day quarantine, self-chosen. It was recommended, but essentially 2 weeks of being by ourselves, limited interaction with the public and family and stuff like that, just to really make sure that we can prohibit the spread of the coronavirus. So yeah, we'll all be going into a self-14-day quarantine. Yeah.
Which is my first opportunity to thank them for coming out here as they're now going to have 14 days of quarantine. Now, how has the perspective, obviously, like, that's an official perspective coming from the state of Wisconsin, coming from the school. How have you seen perspectives change? I mean, not that we're trying to throw anybody under the bus or anything like that, but how have you seen perspectives change among the people who are back in the Midwest over the course of this week?
I mean, I definitely think some people wish they would have said, don't go.
Okay.
I think they're definitely all went from the mindset of, like, you'll regret it to maybe, like, we should have thought about this more, but, it was probably still a good choice, but, I don't know, kind of on, like, the side of, it was probably a little bit like we thought not enough into it, I guess.
Yeah. I think the news right now, and especially social media, is kind of making this out to be a big deal, which of course it is a very big deal, but if you're kind of separate from it in Wisconsin and you're not here, it sounds a lot scarier and a lot more intense. So I think it is starting to affect a lot of people as I'm getting texts, are you okay? Like, are you sick? It sounds like everybody's sick out there, which of course none of us are right now, but it could sound like that just based off of the texts I've been receiving. And
Cue a sneeze. No. Are any of your families asking you not to do the quarantine? No, right? Nobody's like, no, come over here, I'll lick it.
Yeah.
I'll lick like you once you get back from Seattle? Obviously, like, people are taking it a little bit more seriously. Now you're all going to do the quarantine. You're supposed to do the quarantine. So there's been a change, right? There's been a marked change in perspective on it and in the discussion of it. And this isn't to say that, like, everybody went from totally flippant to totally panicking or anything like that, but it's different. There's something different.
Yeah.
How have your perspectives on the coronavirus and COVID-19 and everything connected to it changed over these, 7 days? Because you've had this unique time to be people from the Midwest in Seattle. Nobody else flew from the Midwest to Seattle, spent 7 days. You guys did. How has your perspective changed over the course of the week?
I think before I left, I didn't know much about the virus, and so I was like really freaked out at first, and then I started doing my research, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, just kidding, like, this isn't as bad as we think, and like percentage wise trying to like think of like likelihood of you catching it at your age and health and immunity and all that jazz. So then I was like, all right, we'll come out here. And then like seeing it like live and being in the city, you just realize that like I think you picture Seattle just up in arms and like all freaking out and like that there's chaos, and I think people are going about their lives the same way. I think there are changes and like just self-awareness and quarantine, and also like it's not as busy in the city. We went to Pikes and it was pretty quiet there, but it's just being mindful of like washing your hands and using sanitizer, and if you do feel sick, then it's important that you take those steps.
Yeah, I agree. Same thing. I guess I didn't really know much about it. More of just joked about it and didn't like play it as seriously as like everybody else was. But then when we came here, it was more of just like noticing that people's like routines were changing just a little bit, but people are still living their lives, which I think is what is making it more frustrating for us to see at home, where more things are like up in panic right now, because here we're still moving on and we're still doing things and we're still serving other people. So yeah.
It's interesting to be here because other states are now where Seattle was 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago or something, and the runs on toilet paper have begun and things of that nature. One of you said earlier that like you're not more scared of the virus than you were before, but you're still thinking of it differently. Anybody want to speak to that difference?
Yeah, I think I was one of those people, I think I talked about a little bit earlier too. When I was coming into this, I kind of thought of it as the flu, even maybe a little bit less than the flu. So I really wasn't worried about it. I figured if I get it, I'm going to be totally fine. It's not a big deal. And then you get here and you start to learn more information. You start to talk to more people. And we're going to touch on this later. But it's really not about you as much as it is about the other people. So yes, it is flu-like symptoms, but it's a little bit more serious than that. So this has definitely educated me a lot, is a good way to say it, to come out here and talk to everybody.
Sure. I'd say, me personally, I was more like okay, like, let's just go, let's we're going to Seattle, we committed to going, we're going to keep going, we're not going to let sickness or any disease, like, stop us from doing it. And then coming here, it's, like everyone was saying, like, we're not any more scared or less scared of the virus than we were before, but I think it's just I guess an appreciation for what the virus is and how it affects your daily life, and I guess having almost the privilege of being able to see what Seattle looks like days after it went through the panic, how people are dealing with it by living out their regular lives and just changing it so that they can still, walk their dog, go to the grocery store, visit with friends, but also be really safe about it at the same time as giving me, I guess appreciation or just an understanding of looking at it as this isn't, it's almost like I got to skip the panic of the coronavirus and go straight from, I don't really know what this is, it's kind of sweeping the nation, to, okay, this is how a city's doing it now after the panic, and we just kind of get to join in with them and skip the stockpiling of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Which maybe will be a regret when we get back to Wisconsin. I don't know.
What are examples of like just real examples that you've seen of that sort of consideration that you talked about and the appreciation or that educated perspective? What are real examples that you've seen while you've been here in Seattle?
I guess, just even, so working from home, just seeing the way people do that, going to church on Sunday morning, Germex at the door, having those conversations about meeting in large groups, being, everyone's super considerate about the way that they're treating other people in public not because they're fearful of other people, but they just recognize that there is a disease that is spreading, so we're going to keep our space. And we talked to a lot of people while we were here, just, walking down the avenue, Greenwood Avenue, and it was kind of like everyone was, like, they weren't scared of each other, they're super respectful and super, like, aware of what was happening and taking responsibility for their own health and the health of others as well around them, and the way that they treated each other.
Yeah, I think Anna and I were talking about at one point, we're kind of handshakers. It's a
Yeah.
nice way to kind of break the tension in the
Yeah.
beginning. It's kind of something you go for, and then you
Yeah.
realize, oh, these people we probably shouldn't be shaking hands with everyone right now. It's just,
Or
you
no
gotta
one,
be considerate.
actually.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be considerate of everybody around you, and you need to be worried about yourself as well. Like,
Mhm.
you don't want to be spreading germs everywhere. So, it was different.
Yeah, meetings now end with an elbow bump or
Yeah, air
a
high
shoe
five.
kick. Yeah. Something different. Yeah. When, over the course of the week, we've talked a lot about ministry, and we've talked a lot about mission work, and we've talked a lot about Greenwood Avenue and what we're going to be doing here. But we've also talked a ton about the coronavirus,
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
about the coronavirus. Every meal, every pause, every break, it comes up. And one of the things, let's just do a quick poll. Who at this table uses humor to sort of cope or think through the things that are going on in their lives?
Yeah.
Everybody, right. Everybody does. Everybody does. And we've talked about, like, you guys have had really interesting observations about the sort of, like, coronavirus humor or jokes that you've made or that you've seen online. How do you feel about that humor side of this, or the sort of, like, the use of humor in the midst of the coronavirus? Now that you've been here, you've had the sort of dual perspective we've talked about so far in the city.
I definitely think the humor part comes out of just like, because a lot of it is coming from social media, which is like in our like generation, like the younger generations, more of just like this is kind of how we cope with a lot of things. Like if we don't understand something, or if we don't know how to talk about something, we just come more from like a humor side, like make up memes about it, because that way, like that's our way of communicating. Like we don't really know what's going on, and we're kind of stressed about it. But I think a lot of people too, like I had said, like are using humor as like a way to cope with it. Because it is scary. It is scary when something big like this happens and your whole life is changing. I was talking to these guys earlier about like seniors in college who are kind of like losing their last moments right now. And I think a lot of people are using jokes as a way to just continue to move on. And so you don't have to think about like the fact that you're losing so much time just having to like kind of be like us, like quarantined and being taken away from your friends. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think it's how we process things, and I can understand how some people might be like offended by that and how that can be difficult because humor is kind of picky towards each individual. But I think being respectful in your humor, I think, is really important, but I think we also need to laugh about hard things in life too, because I think that's how we make it through things. So that's my take on the humor.
I'd agree. You can't just like be sitting in like, oh, we're all gonna die in some of the world, or like I think we know what the coronavirus is. We know about it, and so we can either sit in that or we can make jokes about it and enjoy our time together, enjoy the company of the people around us. And I think, I think for us it was about like coping with the fact that we're in the kind of like the center of it in America, but then also like you're with all these amazing people, you want to have fun and like have a community with each other, and that was a lot of, I think, through humor and telling stories and jokes about the coronavirus, the corona. Dun, dun, dun. But yeah, I think it was also just part of building that community, because for a lot of us it was our first time meeting each other and working together, and that's how we came together.
And you can't really do jokes without other people, right? They're the thing that bring us together. Like if you just sit there and laugh to yourself, you have more wrong with you than a virus. It's an important thing. Now, the next question I'm going to ask them, I prepped them on all the questions except for this one, and I intentionally didn't prep them on this one. But we've talked about it a little bit, and I want you to just react to a statement, right? So just weigh in on this statement, or think about this statement and react to it. Jesus got the coronavirus.
I feel like I asked you this question the other day.
My, how the table has turned.
It has.
It did, it was
I
okay.
think when I think when I was initially talking to Pastor Reader about it, I was just kind of saying like, oh, Jesus suffered everything. Did Jesus suffer the coronavirus, or did he suffer all this stuff? And I was kind of expecting like no, Kayla, he died. Like he didn't have to go through all that stuff. But it kind of turned into oh, that's an interesting discussion topic. Yeah, I think that Jesus suffered everything on the cross. He suffered all of our sins, all of our pains, all of our agonies, and I think sickness as well. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing that I never really thought about before, but I guess kind of being in the heart of a growing sickness right now, it's kind of something interesting, a cool thought.
You did great.
Yeah, I guess the joke on that, just when you go through suffering or things of hard times, like looking to Christ as the example in those moments, for how he acted and responded, but also knowing that we aren't alone in the suffering and the disease and all of those things. That not only did Jesus experience it on the cross and knew about them, he's God of all time, but that he's also, we've been talking about how he has defeated death and sickness, and maybe we don't see it right now, but we know that for all time he has overcome it, which is it's a good thing to remember. It's easy to forget.
And I think, like, circumstance too, like, God's not going to snap his fingers and all of a sudden the virus is going to go away, you know? So I think being, like, in the here and now, understanding that, like, this circumstance probably is going to last a while before we figure things out, and being patient in that and knowing that, like, you're in his hand. Like, he's still guiding and protecting you, and he's shaping and molding you throughout this too. So I think that's important to remember through the crazy.
Yeah, and in a hand that has a scar that says, I did this already.
Mm-hmm.
I've handled this before. So there's been like one sort of overarching thing, one big lesson that all of you have brought up at various times. You said it earlier in a pretty powerful way, but your perspective on coronavirus with this one big sort of central thing has become what? I'm looking at you because you said it
Yeah,
earlier.
so I guess what I said earlier, we were having a conversation, and basically, like, I came to the conclusion, like, while we were talking to our pastor at Wisconsin Lutheran College, is that yes, the coronavirus is, like, it's scary for us, and we've been thinking about, like, how we're not gonna be able to go to work, and we're not gonna be able to go to school, and not be able to see our friends, but we're doing all these things, we're taking ourselves out of our lives for other people. So I think that's something that's really important to remember at home. Like, if you're frustrated because you have to not be able to go to work, or something in your life is completely changing because of this, it's not just for yourself. Like, we need to take our selfishness away for just a second, and start living for other people, and start changing our mindsets just a little bit. And I think that's also kind of like God's power being like, let's work on other people as well, because that's Jesus' whole point, is like, he died for our sins, so we need to start living through him as well.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing that I discovered through your guys' conversation was, and through your question about Jesus and having coronavirus, is that Christ suffered everything that we suffer, and therefore he has perfect sympathy with us in every piece of suffering that we go through. And at this time, now, he has perfect sympathy with us and with our nation and with our communities and with the families who have lost people. But he also teaches us to have sympathy for the people who are around us, whether they have the disease or they don't, whether they're afraid of the disease or they're not. No matter where they're at, everybody's thinking about this. Everyone's talking about this. And it is Jesus' call to us to have unconditional love and sympathy for all of those people. And I'm really grateful that you guys came out here, because you taught me that over the course of this week. So thank you for doing that, and for being part of this. And so thank you all for watching this. All millions and millions of you, we're sure, for watching that. And do something for somebody, right? Look out for somebody in the midst of this time, because even if you don't know someone who's sick, you know someone who's suffering because of the shutdowns or the closures or whatever it is in the midst of the coronavirus. It's very easy for you to find somebody you can help in your community right now. Call your church, call a pastor, call somebody and ask, who can I help and how? Because the worst thing you can do in the midst of the coronavirus is say, I'm fine, and just leave it. That's not what Jesus did. That's not what Jesus calls us to do. And that's not what Jesus does for us. So, I hope that this has been helpful to you. Thank you guys for your thoughts and your candor and all of this. Have a great day.